Salis. So, Peter, for our audience listening, start things out. Tell us about your company.
First of all, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here. So I'm a pediatric ER doc by training. Trained in LA, went to Pittsburgh, came back to Florida, but I'm a native. And I recognized very quickly that I was not able to quickly and rapidly treat that kid who is rushed in cardiac arrest. And, even though I trained at some very good institutions, the system that was out there to help me get the right dose and the right piece of equipment for, let's say, an infant versus a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 10-year-old, was very complicated. Believe it, if I even tell you, it'll make you nervous, but they would have you take out a long piece of tape, measure the kid, and on that tape would be dosing that you'd have to then do 2 calculations to figure out how to then draw up the volume to give that kid, all while the kid's dead in front of you. And I knew that, listen, I have very little stress. I'm not a stressed guy. But when I was sitting in the ER, those early days, I said, I'm now the responsible party. And if the kid comes into my emergency department, I need to know how to fix them without having to look up and look at a calculator or do math in my head. And so I figured it out by just kind of creating this little system. And I was so embarrassed about it, I didn't tell anybody for a couple of years. And the nurses found and figured, they said, wow, Pete, you're much better than you used to be. How did you do it? And so I kind of made up some story. And finally, I gave a lecture one day to about 200 people, doctors, nurses, paramedics. And at the very end of that lecture, I put up the 2 slides of my little trick that I had learned, that I taught myself. And about 50 people lined up after the talk. And I thought, hey, this great talk. And they're like, no, we just want those last 2 slides. And so I came home and I said to my wife, I'm like, I just had an epiphany that it's not just me. And we started with just creating a little badge buddy, like a piece of plastic that went on the badge buddy for the physician or clinician. And then I started getting asked to talk around the country about this thing. And then next thing you know, people said, hey, we want a little bit more, a little bit more. And then lo and behold, we ended up creating books that have the dosing in it. And then I created an app about 5 years ago now. And here we are today, and we're in all 50 states and over 1,300 cities, in ambulances all across the country and hospitals all across the country. So that's the story.
So did you know you were an entrepreneur before you got into that?
So I am not entrepreneurial in the sense of I'm not like a good business person. I married up, and my wife is our CEO. My whole family are entrepreneurs. So what I did know about myself, to your question, is that, I always knew that if there was something to do, that I could do it. I never thought about the whole kind of running the business behind it, but I'm definitely an independent thinker, and I'm a contrarian. And so I always say the business found me. Uh-huh. And it slowly ramped up until it hit. And then.
So do you have intellectual property, patents, copyrights, trade secrets? How does it work?
That's a great question. It's hard to copyright or patent software, right? As you know, and I have 2 brothers who have a big internet company, and they tell me the same thing, that it's hard to patent software. So what we do is, not only do we sell software, and it's a software as a service model, we also train these departments and these hospitals on how to do it. Okay. So we have a nationally accredited course that goes along with our highly customized application that is not an out-of-the-box type of application. And so, if people want to go and copy exactly what we do, which people could, they'd have to have the know-how, and then they have to have the presence around the country to go into these government agencies and try and take that business away.
So you got the first mover advantage, pretty much, in this.
Well, we actually replaced somebody else who was that long piece of paper. Uh-huh. But I think, listen, it is possible that someone can come and figure it out, but it took us a while to do that. But we don't really have anything kind of patented, if you will.
Was there an incident that inspired this, or was this just a few incidents, or what happened? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was 2005, room number 4 in the emergency department, And they brought in a kid who was in severe anaphylaxis. She had eaten a peanut. And, face swelling, wheezing, tongue was swelling, barely breathing. And the nurse runs up to me and says, "Doc, room 4, now." So I go into room 4. I recognize the issue, clearly. But the girl was about 4 years old, and so there was a specific dose that she had to get of 3 different drugs. And these drugs are all fractions. They're not easily calculable. So they brought out that long piece of paper thing, and where I had trained, we never trained on this thing. These large children's hospitals figured out that long piece of tape was garbage, and they figured out they had made their own thing. I get to this hospital, they don't have their own thing. So they bring me this long tape. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, in the heat of the moment, I'm like, that's the drug, right? And the nurse says, "That drug?" I said, "That drug." What I didn't recognize that on that tape, that drug, the dose for that particular thing was 10 times more than what I was treating. So I said, "Yeah, give that dose." And she gave that dose. So I gave a 10-fold overdose. The girl ended up doing fine. Her heart rate was through the roof. I didn't recognize I'd made that error until years later. When I saw other people making the same error, and I look and I said, what is going on here? Come to find out, these errors are rampant, right? So if you're listening to the show today and you have kids and you call 911 and they're using that tape, that tape and what they carry on the ambulance has nothing to do with each other. There's a 50% discordance. So that was one of my errors that I made. And then I became a medical director for a lot of EMS systems, and then the errors started rolling in. The same type of errors over and over again. And these are serious errors. And till today, we've been doing this for over 10 years, just over 10 years. There are cities in this country and areas in Florida that still use that old tape piece of paper, and they just either they don't know or they don't want to convert over to a different system. And it's very scary, like knowing what I know in this world and all the things that I thought that when I created this thing that it was gonna be like wildfire, but I was completely wrong.
So can you explain the first 2 years, right? You have this idea, you have this empathy, and then you start building it. How do you actually go to market and build it? Give us the structure.
Right. So this is where my wife comes in. Essentially, I'm medical director for Antevy Fire Rescue. They have the badge buddies. Then they say, hey, the badge buddy only has 8 medications, but we have 40. So I went to my computer and I went to Kinko's and I bound the book and I created something for my fire department. And I created a little bag with all the equipment in it. And I said, hey, Chief, you mind, let's test it out. Fine, tested it. So very, very little kind of capital expenditure there. We borrowed $65,000 from my mother-in-law, love you, Franny. And we kind of got the first, if you will, MVP. Everyone loved it in my department. So now we get a phone call from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and they said, hey, come present. I said, okay. I took the box, I took the book, and I'm in a room with about 15 chiefs. And I said, Chief, do you have an assistant? He says, yeah. I said, bring her in. And I said, who's the best here in pediatrics? One guy raised it. I said, you come up too. So I had him up in the front of the room. And I said to the assistant, you ever treated a patient? No. You ever dosed medication? No. No. And this guy, the other guy, was like the guy. And I gave them a case. I wanted 4 drugs. She got them all in 12 seconds. He couldn't get one right. And all the chiefs were like this. I get in my car. I get a phone call. And they said, we'll take 200 of those. I called my wife. I said, we have to start a business. And that's the day the business was born.
So then even fast forward, you get the order 200, right? This happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, but then how do you actually fulfill them? How do you go out to the market? How do you build this company the first year to get those 200 to their hands?
Right. So we ended up, right. So just to make those bags that we made, we try to source them in the United States, too much money. We had to source all the printing, and then I had to build these books using some application. Didn't have that either. So I was doing it on my computer. And then, we had to negotiate with Miami-Dade. That phone call didn't turn into a PO the next day. It was like a year process until they negotiated me all the way down and so forth. And then finally, I found a friend who had a friend in China who said he makes bags, and the guy flies in, I tell him exactly what I want, and again, with that $65K that we first got, we ended up kind of getting that first order done, and then that order got the next order done and the next order.
And can you explain the technology?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm still kind of trying to figure it all out. We have a bag, you know, something happens and it's easier to use, right? But explain it in more detail.
I'll explain it to you. So just give you a use case. So you have a 1-year-old who had a peanut at a restaurant.
Yep.
And paramedics rush in, and that child is not breathing so well. Blue around the lips, oxygen 60%, and so forth. So you have to give epinephrine in the leg, like EpiPen. You have to give a steroid, you have to give Benadryl, you have to give albuterol, you have to give fluids, all those things. For that 1-year-old compared to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, the dose is all different. We've developed an application that goes on their phone or on the computer that they have when they're on the call, that you just go, you click on the app, you say 1-year-old, and all the drugs that you have in your ambulance, customized, which is the hard part, dosed to the volume. So it'll say, for example, 0.1 ml of this drug, 0.25 ml of that drug, 3.2 ml of that drug, and 400 mLs of the other drug. So within seconds, that kid on mom's lap in the restaurant is getting treated. What they used to do, because they knew they had to pull out the tape, they would say, Mom, Dad, let me take this child. We're going to rush to the ER, get to the back of the ambulance, close the doors, and then they just, what we call, they say diesel fuel. Let's just go. En route, the kid gets no treatment. Show up to my door, they throw the kid to me, and I said, what have you done? Well, Doc, we was, a little hectic. We could, and nothing was done. Cardiac arrest, the same thing. So we have managed to not just create a tool that they love, but then we give the education behind it, and we've been able to turn the cardiac arrest survival rates of entire cities completely 180 based on that.
And what about in the hospital themselves, right? Before, did they have that device in the hospitals, or not so much? Or your devices are being used there as well?
It's in every hospital in the country. The old one, and you go into there, and I've been to many hospitals around this country, and I kind of have fun, and I say, 3-year-old cardiac arrest, and they panic because nobody knows how to use that thing. They have another book. Someone's pulling out an application. So we've created a hospital app that goes into the EHR of that hospital. So it's kind of it's integrated inside of it. It's a much longer sales cycle, much more difficult to do.
Yeah.
But we're now in the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, all their hospitals. Memorial Hermann in Houston, one of the largest systems in the country, all of their hospitals. Denver, a lot of hospitals in Florida. Our hospital application just got launched in the last year or so. So now we're kind of rolling in that industry.
Is there any competition out there, or you own this niche?
Yeah, there's no one close to what we do. And, personally, I wish that there were other people because, people like pediatric resuscitation as much as I do, clearly, I guess.
Is this based on nut allergies, or is it other thing? Is that the main thing?
No. It's everything and anything. So someone's got COVID and they're dying, septic shock. You have any kind of cardiac issue, kids who have, transplants. Any sick and injured child who is kind of spiraling down and you're calling 911 or you're in an ER and everyone's rushing in the room, that's the space that we live in.
How hard is it to dislodge tradition?
Oh, my God.
Talk about that.
If we had, I could write a book on this. When I created what I created, people laughed at me for about a good 5 or 6 years. Friends wouldn't talk to me. I would go to conferences, they would look the other way. Now that we're, in all 50 states, and we're kind of like, we've done really well. Now those people are coming. Oh, I always believed in you. No, you didn't. But it was. I always knew that and I'm not saying this in a bragging way, but like I knew that I was right because I'm the one who made the mistake, and there was no one in the world who was going to tell me that that what I developed is worse than what we currently had. But people were so embedded and ingrained that system, and people still till today, they'll die on the sword on that system.
Wow.
And you go and you show them, and they still say, you know what, I'm not going to look. And so it's incredible that it's taken us so long to get this far.
So the market's first was rescue squads, emergency personnel, and then it moved to hospitals.
Correct.
Where else? Doctors' offices? Where else do you know?
Listen, one thing I learned from my two older brothers is you got to be laser focused. And so we get calls all the time from dentists and pediatricians and regular lay people. And we're laser focused on the EMS market and the hospital market. We have years of work to do. Now we're getting calls from all over the world. So we're doing work in Alberta, Canada, where we have our system in Abu Dhabi now. But we're trying to really be focused on what we're doing, because once you start to dabble in everything, then you kind of lose what you're doing. So we're avoiding those markets right now. Yeah.
Dr. Antevy, I'm curious, what made you want to go into the child care emergency services in the beginning of your career? Was it an incident that happened early on, or was it something you studied in your medical studies that provoked your interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you go back and look at my grade school yearbook, and you have a picture of me on a tricycle, and it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Underneath it says pediatrician. So I don't know. I mean, I've always been kind of into the business of caring for people, and I guess I got that from my family and so forth. But when I got into pediatrics, I knew that I had to be in the most critical room. For me, that's what gets me. And for me, the more critical the patient, the more I want to be treating that patient, which is opposite for a lot of people. But for me, business is gets me anxious. Dying people doesn't, which is interesting.
Let's talk about you being a business owner for a moment. What's been the hardest transition, right? One thing, working, getting a W-2,
Yep.
and then swapping over and running this business. What's been the hardest thing since the swap?
Yeah. In the emergency department, I'm a soloist, per se. In a business, you have to be a team player, right? So whereas when I'm running a team in the emergency department, I know who I have, and I'm controlling the situation. When you're running a business and you're hiring people, I'm not a good manager of people. I expect people to be A+++, right? And because of where I trained, I never dealt with people who were anything but. And with as many people as we interview nowadays, and when we see people writing us on their CV and their emails they can't spell correctly, and for me, I struggle with the growth of the company. My wife handles all of this, but that's been the hardest part for me, is that I just can't do the marketing, and I want to go fix everything, and I realize now that I'm the vision guy, and I become the brand kind of thing, but I'm not. I can't go put out fires, because that's not how it works. Learned a lot that way.
Where does this go in the next 5 years? Do you have an exit strategy, or?
They're going to put me 6 feet under by the time I'm done with this. But I will tell you that there could be an exit strategy. Listen, I'm 48, and I love what I do. I could do it if there was 48 hours in a day, I would do it. But this business is just trying to grow on its own. So we just got the entire state of Utah. So now the state is now buying every EMS system, the product, and we're soon to announce other states, Virginia and Alaska and Hawaii, and we hope more states after that. And then we have the hospital thing. So I think that without me, I think that maybe because of how I think differently, until people kind of wholesale believe what I've been doing for the last 10 years. There has to be other people that come behind me on the physician level side and say, this is what we're going to be doing. So right now I'm driving kind of major change in the industry. And so, it's something where I would give it 5 or 10 more years. And I think that a lot of people will kind of have converted over to our way of thinking. And then perhaps I'll feel comfortable doing other things, but I absolutely love every minute of what I do.
How do you market this to these states? What do you do?
It's been a very interesting thing. How people buy in EMS, it's multifactorial, meaning that first they want to see who else is using it. Then they want to see the data on it. Then they have to see a couple of social media posts and maybe an article written. Oh, and then there's Peter on 60 Minutes. Oh, okay. So maybe he really does know what he's talking about. And then something clicks. And the biggest thing that clicked a few weeks ago was when we announced the state of Utah thing. my email box flooded with people who never talked to me for a long time, and they said, wow, we get it. Let's have a conversation. Zoom call. Boom. I mean, it's something in every single person that's different. But in healthcare, if someone's listening who wants to start a business in healthcare, it is very hard to convince doctors like me, paramedics, nurses, to do something different. Almost as hard as saying, if you're an iPhone user, to say, go use Android. That's how people are like, I am not going to go to that other phone. That's the thing.
Well, Peter, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump into our hot or not segment of the show.
Businesses looking to enhance technology strategies, integrate system data, or develop mobile apps or digital platforms should consider Oz. Oz's services and solutions range from automation and machine learning to creating COVID-free biospheres with a mobile solution. With more than 22 years of experience, Oz's cutting-edge technologies and adaptability allow their consultants to lead businesses into their digital futures. To learn more about their latest solutions, Salus and Rainmaker, please visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, everybody. As a reminder, you could catch all these amazing episodes at shrimptankboca.com, as well as on Instagram at shrimptankboca or Facebook Live. So, Peter, on this segment, it's called Hot or Not. We're going to bring up a topic and jump into detail why you believe it's hot or not for your business. So let's talk about the recent commercial we just heard, Salus. Is that hot or not?
Well, I think that when you look at COVID and you look at the people's kind of thought process in the world about COVID in America, unfortunately, it's becoming very cold, right? And so I love Salus. I love the application. I'm a part of it. I just wish that there are people out there who kind of understand that, the future of COVID is not ending tomorrow. And if I had to predict, we're going to be in COVID hell, if you will, through the summer of next year. And so this is going to be a slow moving train wreck, if I had to say about COVID. And so I think Salus's solution is very unique, and I love it.
And what do you do for them, and how can they help people get back to events? Can you explain it in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So Salus essentially helps large customers have events, and so we work with some very large clients across the country, talking to the who's who of the entertainment industry, of the cruise industry, MMA, you name it, football, and so forth. And we help industries who really need to get their people safe and keep them safe, to actually have all that information on the app, so that when they walk through the door, they're green, they're good to go, and we provide the testing that goes along with it. So we've had great success in keeping, large companies or events open, and knock on wood, it's been great, and the feedback has been amazing.
Yeah, they partnered with one of our past guests, the A7FL.
That's right.
And it was phenomenal. He was one of the first,
right.
Sports leagues to get back into, the grind, of course, back in business. And now he's expanding his league, and he's getting a lot of exposure. So it's pretty cool to see, Salus, combination A7FL, as well as, you're connected to the brand. Pretty unique.
Yep.
So my question is always the usual question I ask: family business, hot or not?
Well, you're talking to somebody here who I would say absolutely hot. My two brothers started a business that they did very well. They exited recently. I'm a family person, and we strongly believe in family business. And I would say 100%. We're bootstrapped, and we're happily chugging along.
So you're working well with your family in this endeavor. There hasn't been any conflict at all.
It's interesting. I could tell you that my wife is her thoughts and the way she thinks through things is so different. So like I'm truly the yin to her yang, and without her, this business wouldn't go, and probably without me, the same thing on the concept side of it. And through COVID, interestingly, we've been so busy, and like the day goes by like that. It's been amazing. So if my wife was sitting at home doing nothing, it would be much worse. But she's just a superstar, so I'm very lucky that way.
Cool.
Yep.
Nice.
Hot or not, taking some venture capital, right? You have something that's exploding. So I got to think, people have knocked on your door.
Yep.
And you said bootstrapping your business thus far, so taking capital.
Nope.
I don't know. Nope.
I think honestly, it's become a thing, right? To take capital, and what people don't really recognize is that as soon as you do, the clock starts. Now listen. Some people need the capital, and they need to kind of ramp up as fast as possible. I don't believe that. I think that if people out there are listening, get to an MVP, have a product, have 1 user, 10 users, 100 users, and if you can get to that using a no-code platform or something else, then do it. But as soon as you get into the VC realm, many, many stories of people who end up getting ousted from their companies and so forth. Nothing against the VC community, mind you. I love the investment mindset, and I'm trying to get into that. But for my personal company, it's a nut.
Now, you mentioned MVP a few times. For our audience listening, what is an MVP exactly?
So it's a minimum viable product. It's essentially the product that you can take to your close friends and say, hey, if this was a product, would you use it? And then you kind of expand the circle a little bit. But it's something that doesn't have to be fully functional. I was at dinner the other night here in Coral Springs, and a friend of mine who's got his MVP, he showed it to me on his phone, and only a few of the buttons worked, but it was beautiful. And I said, you know what? That's a great idea. And so I think people need to figure out the MVP before they look for money.
So your brothers just had an exit. Have they knocked on your door to give you some funding? They love your business. You said love working with family. So why not just take their money, instead of venture capital, and keep it within the the bloodline?
Yeah. Honestly, Jason, thankfully now we're not seeking funding.
Okay.
If we were, my brothers would definitely be there for us. What they give us most, and which I love them for, is they give us their time and their advice. And so they've been there, done that. They've scaled to, $50 million run rate, and they're just really smart people. And so they've given us a lot of their time, and hopefully we will never need their money.
Soon, if they partner with you, they're going to go to Dr. Kidwell, because Dr. Kidwell, his entire background on family business, he knows the good, the bad, the ugly, right, Dr. Kidwell?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, yeah. So trying to get the word out, talk about, is social media hot or not? You mentioned it a minute ago. How is it hot for this business? How do you use it? What do you do with it?
We have figured out a formula that works, and it's very interesting in healthcare versus if you're in a typical business. So if you're the doctor and you created something, you should never go out there and say, I'm the doctor who created this, you should buy it. So you'll almost never hear me talk about my company, except for days like this. I'm only talking about content. So everything we do, from the Facebook page to I do these little short videos, it's all about content that's free.
It's all about what this is and what this is. Not that you're selling it, but it's about
it's about how to take care of someone in cardiac arrest, how to take care of someone who's in shock. So it's basically, if you're out there and you're watching videos that I've made, you pretty much have no idea that we have a company, except that it says it's called the Antevy Minute. So over time, it's good that people, when they see me, they know that I'm never going to approach them for a sale. I'm never going to talk about my business. And I've kind of kept that wall between the business side, and then what I love to do is just teach people how to be better at cardiac arrest resuscitation. And so we use social media strictly for evidence-based teaching, and I let my team take care of all the marketing side. But more and more people now see Antevy as the trusted brand for pediatric resuscitation. And then ultimately, when they see how other people love what we're doing, they ultimately say, oh, we have to do that. So as opposed to if you run a regular business, you want to tell people how successful you are, how successful the business is, like my brothers. Whereas if you're a physician, you should never do that. That's the formula that we've figured out.
What do you use in social media? What's hot for you?
Yeah, so for us, we use Facebook, which we probably get the most action on. Twitter, obviously, there. And then LinkedIn is a great resource because I'm connected to people in the industry who are the decision makers. And so I'll oftentimes use LinkedIn, and we get a lot of movement, just kind of psychological movement towards what we're doing because of LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask one more. Well, go ahead, Jason.
You forgot about good old Clubhouse, how we met.
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. Clubhouse is, I'm so happy that I met you on Clubhouse. For me, kind of Clubhouse is kind of mentally stimulating because it's like having a dinner party, right?
Sure.
And you're around the table with people, but I think you have to filter who those people are. And over time, I'll only go now into, like during a lunch break or like on the drive. And I'll say, oh, Jason's on, and I'll come into your room. But it's interesting. There's a lot of scammers on Clubhouse.
Yeah. It's
And-
coming to light right now.
Yeah.
How much scamming's going on that app. Absolutely.
Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about, this is too broad a question perhaps, but healthcare.
Yeah.
What is hot? What is not?
Yeah, so I'm actually involved in another startup, if you will, not mine, but I'm helping them. Where when you call 911 today, it's still saying you call, we haul. So if you call us at 2:00 in the morning, you're going to the hospital, unless you refuse to. But why aren't we just treating those people where we find them, right? How come I can't put an IV in you, give you IV fluids, give you whatever you need? And so there are outfits out there now that are going to be doing that to prevent you from having to go to the hospital. And so more and more in the next couple of years, you're going to see that's going to be very hot. I've been doing something of that sort down in Miami and kind of South Broward area, and it's been very successful. But now I'm involved in something that maybe we'll go to at scale and do that across the country.
So it's sort of like back in the old days when
Correct.
the doctor would come to your house and you wouldn't go to the hospital. There wasn't a hospital.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because remember, every ER visit's $3,000.
Right.
You get admitted, it's $8,000. That's $11,000 for someone who may just have had some abdominal pain. That a quick telehealth visit with a paramedic on scene, do some blood work, and you could see your doctor in the morning.
So what are the interests that are aligned against that?
The hospital system today, with the for-profit hospital systems, absolutely want people to come through their doors. So if we keep that $11,000 patient out of the hospital, they don't like that.
Right.
Once you go to another type of model where keeping people healthy is better, and you get paid for keeping people healthy, but the healthcare system is not aligned that way. And so EMS, think of as more like socialized medicine. You can call us, we'll come to your house, we'll do everything, and then you can say, you know what, I don't want to go. And we did all that, we won't ask you for $1. And the hospital is the exact opposite. They do a wallet biopsy, and they say, let's see what you got in there, and then we'll do 1 million tests, half that you didn't need, and now we're gonna have to go in and do the collections against your house
To protect themselves against lawsuits, right?
Well, listen. In South Florida, you probably have those types of issues. I do agree, but just going to a hospital, you come to me in my emergency department, and you're not feeling well. Even if I do nothing, it's expensive.
So you're still working in as an
Yeah.
emergency. So what kind of feedback and pushback do you get on that from the hospital?
Well, when it comes time to keeping people at home, the hospital doesn't want to talk to me about those things. But at the end of the day, they understand where this is going. So some of them are actually starting to move in that direction to be part of these types of things. And the payment structure from the feds has to change such that, the hospitals aren't so upset that you're leaving someone at home when they really didn't have to come to the hospital. So the feds have finally gotten into this game as well. Yeah.
Dr. Antevy, is the healthcare system, speaking of not being aligned, with some of these goals, is it hotter in the U.S. or in Canada, would you say?
As far as the quality of care, or just healthcare in general?
As far as aligning, with what you're talking about,
Yeah.
the profit system.
Well, listen, you look at Israel, you look at Canada, it's a socialized system. There's pros and cons to that too, right? You have people who flew from Canada to America to get a vaccine. You have people who fly from Canada to America to get their hip MRI that was scheduled for 3 months from now, when you can get it here in an hour from now. So the system is driven differently, but look at what happened in Israel, where they covered a large percent of their population. Why? Because they can text you and say, hey, you're over 65, show up to the corner of this road and that road tomorrow. And they knew exactly who you were, where you were, and what you needed. Whereas here, they're still giving away paper cards after you get vaccinated. 2021, we're giving away paper.
I don't lose it, right? I had someone actually that they put the wrong date on the card. I saw on social media. She's flipping out. She can't get the second vaccine, and she can't talk to anyone, and if that was digital, I mean, we could correct that in 2 seconds, and they won't give her the second vaccine.
How are we living in America in 2021 when I can get food delivered to my door in literally 15 minutes, and soon they'll drop a drone with coffee, Starbucks, right to my house, and we can't get that. And that's why I'm with Salus, because that's exactly what they do. And I just wish that more people knew about it.
Okay, so last question for the break. Hot or not, building an app. Is your technology all website-driven, app-driven? If it is app-driven, hot or not so far, your experience?
Well, I think for sure hot. That this is what separates us from everybody else, in that the app that we built it all in-house. We have our own team of engineers. That didn't start that way, by the way. We kind of rebuilt it after we got our in-house team. And now we're in the process of doing another whatever they call it.
2.0.
Yeah, it's actually 3.0 now. It's just getting better and better. But the app is what separates us from everybody else. And so hardcore on yes to the app. Yes.
Did it start as an app or start as a website in the early days?
Oh, in the early days, it was always an app. It was. Yep. Because
share with our audience what goes right, what goes wrong, because so often we hear everyone wants to jump and create an app, and they're very expensive to build.
Yes.
There's tons of bugs.
Yes.
Right. You need it for iOS, Android.
Windows.
Who knows? Maybe in BlackBerry. But what? Tell us. A little bit more detail on that end.
Yeah. So we actually outsourced the app to a company called Original Impressions, which they've been bought out since then. But it was a guy who had about eight developers in his shop, and the first iteration probably cost us like $30K, $40K, something like that. And it actually worked okay. If you see what we've built since then, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually did that. But it got us to point B. But I think that if you're going to build an app, what people don't recognize, Jason, is that there's so many things under the hood of an app.
Oh yeah.
And after you launch, then iOS comes out with 14.5 and everything changes. You have to have the know-how. If not, it's a black hole. So knock on wood, our app and our software works very well because of the team that we've been able to assemble. But if you don't have a team, then you really have to kind of think through that before you do it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to lead us to our commercial break, and I'm excited because when we come back, we're going to ask about those engineers and hiring for a moment.
Hiring is a challenge for any company. If you had to cancel in-person career fairs due to coronavirus restrictions, or you're looking for ways to reach more qualified candidates, it's time to speak to the virtual hiring event professionals at Premier Virtual. Their best-in-class virtual event platform is powered over 1,500 events. They have the experience and proven results to ensure your next career fair is a success. Visit premiervirtual.com or call 561-717-9717. That's 561-717-9717. Premier Virtual, the future-focused virtual event platform. That takes us to our segment called Future Focused, where we discuss the staffing and recruiting challenges that every company faces as they grow, and it's sponsored by Premier Virtual, the future-focused virtual event platform. So, Peter, tell us how you go about finding the right people for your organization's needs now and your plans to do that in the future.
Wow, that's a great question. I can say that I always find myself in the kind of quasi-recruiting mode. And so we have found our best people just because I said, hey, you seem pretty smart. And then, but that doesn't work now. As our company, we have 23 people, and now we're hiring right now.
Wait, time out. They look pretty smart. Is it their shoes? Is it what they wear, their watch? You got to dive a little deeper into that one.
I will. So this is it. So I'm the medical director for a large paramedic school here. And the students come around and they rotate with me in the hospital, in the emergency department. And this one kid comes, he's 21, tall guy, handsome guy. And I know his dad. His dad's a nurse who works next in the adult side. And he comes, I said, hey, nice to meet you. And I say, hey, tell me about yourself. He's like, well, I'm trying to become a paramedic, but I used to have a business. I'm like, well, stop right there. Paramedic who likes business. I said, come over here, let me talk to you for a second. And I call my wife, and she's like, 21, I'm not going to hire him. I said, you got to talk to him. This guy is a rock star. Next person, we found our first engineer. Her husband shows up to pick her up. I start talking to him. I said, come on in. What do you do? I'm an engineer, but I'm the lead guy at this big company. I said, hey, let's talk. And we hired him. Took him away from his company. Recently, I was doing some COVID vaccinations at a nursing home as part of my Coral Springs job. And then I started doing weekly webinars with all these leaders of the old age homes. And the guy who was leading this one nursing home, young guy, had a lot of healthcare. I said, are you looking to move up in life? And he's like, absolutely. So now he's our vice president of operations. We just brought him on. But other than that, like as far as that, we do this the typical. We try to use LinkedIn, Indeed. It's very hard to find the signal through the noise doing it that way.
And these do not sound like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 positions, right? Engineers that you need in the healthcare space. I mean, these people have solid salaries.
They do.
And some of them might even have pensions, 401ks, matches, the top of the line healthcare, right? So I'm assuming you have to have all that. Plus, do you do any equity share as well in the company?
Sure. So we now provide full-on insurance, health and dental. We have a 401k. We just got started up this year, thank God, with a match. We do provide, stock options to our employees, which we're very proud of, to our executive team at this point in time. And we really find the value. We want to grow. We want our employees to grow with us, and we want them to benefit as well. And again, we have no exit here in the near future, but we want to kind of help them grow in the future.
What about sales reps? Because from what I understand, your product's amazing, and it's just about scaling at this point to get it heard in more cities and more states. And it just seems like sales reps, of course, are sometimes the hardest people to hire. So, is that where your weakness is right now? Yep. I'm just guessing that.
Yep. So it's very hard to hire developers, although we perhaps hired one today. We had the final interview, so we're hoping he'll accept the offer.
Hopefully he's not listening to this.
Yeah.
Ask for a raise.
Yeah. And then we have on the sales side, I'll tell you why it's difficult, Jason, because what we sell, you're not selling a widget, right? And so you have to be able to sit there and explain what exactly it is that we do and why it's important to you, chief, or a doctor or nurse. And I know there are companies, and my brothers are one of these companies, that they'll actually put these applicants through like an IQ test. And we have found that just a lot of the people who we try to use for salespeople just don't cut it in that department. So we need a different level of person who understands health technology, loves sales, can take rejection, and you're wicked smart.
Do you outsource anything in terms of staffing?
Nope, we don't do that. And we are open to hiring people remotely. And so if someone calls us from Oregon and is a great developer, we'll take you. Even sales at this point in time, because at this point, it really is not hard to sell what we sell, but certain salespeople just have the cadence and they just know how to follow through. Being in sales is a very difficult job.
I'm assuming the competition's through the roof. I mean, medical sales, I just remember all my friends graduating college, and, I'm in my 30s today, but I just remember, and I still have a lot of them in medical sales and software sales. I mean, the competition's through the roof, and people make, sales positions millions of dollars in software sales.
Yeah, listen, there are certain software salespeople who can make quite a bit of money. Our sales reps do very, very well, but they may not come close to some other companies who are selling $1 million deals. But we're open to anyone. We pre-screen a whole lot of people, Jason, I can tell you, but very, very few, unfortunately, make it through that first sieve to where we can say qualified candidate.
Do you ever look at any kind of thing like a virtual hiring event, participate in that?
You know what? We have not, and we probably should. But I try and go on Clubhouse and hear that lowly engineer who wants to come to Florida and he's looking for the best job in the world, and I'll trying
I
to
think timing is right? You got Magic Leap, which is failing down in Miami. So there's a lot of great engineers, a lot of great salespeople that, couldn't really sell that product because it wasn't really getting out there
That's right.
like it was supposed to. And then you got the whole, California side, which is moving to Miami.
Yes.
And you see all the billboards like,
Yes.
get down here, all these tax incentives. So I would think it's great timing. Put ads up in California.
You know what? I would agree with you. I mean, I'm thinking this is so easy. Just come and, our team is amazing. And but from your mouth to God's ears, maybe we should be doing more of that. Maybe put a billboard like Suarez did saying, come to Miami when he put that up in California.
Was that real? I wasn't even sure. I
Yeah.
saw it on Facebook one day. I didn't know someone just joked around that billboard was there, but it really was.
Yeah,
He did.
yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And he's a marketing genius. And I know that the mayor of Broward County, Michael Udine, he's not trying to make Broward County. He's a great guy. So I think that we have a lot of work to do in Broward County. If you're out there and you're an engineer, salesperson, come on down, baby. Let's go. It's a great place to stay.
Any other advice you have for staffing before we move on?
I'm probably the wrong guy because it just seems so difficult for us. We haven't really ever used like the recruiter at this point in time. We've tried those early on, but we also like to ask our engineers and our salespeople, and we say, "Are your friends?" Because typically the friends of those folks are really good as well, and so we've had some luck there as well.
Yeah, very few current employees will recommend a bad friend.
That's right. That's exactly. And so we have a couple of hires directly as a relationship to our current employees. So yeah.
Doctor, does your company have the most room to grow in product and service development with the optimizing the application, with the bag, the toolkit that comes with it, or with the program that teaches these facilities how to implement them?
That's a great question. Our application, we're coming out with like the 3.0 version in about 6 months from now, which is going to really take it to a whole nother level. And I'm not going to discuss that right this second what we're doing, but it's a set of features that when we tell our customers that's coming out, they're like, thank God, like it's going to be amazing. And so I think once we have that, our educational platform has a lot of work to grow as well because, doctors, nurses, and paramedics have to retrain every couple of years, and people love our course. We just have to get it out there. So scaling, like you said, Jason, I mean, if we had 30, if I could afford 30 more sales reps, I would do it. But our business is growing at the pace it's growing. We're not really in a hurry per se, if you will. Maybe some people think we should be because every kid's life, is at stake here. But it's as is. It's part of the family business type of thing. Is that we don't have people chasing us saying, you must grow 10x by the next 3 years or else, we're going to come and give you cement sneakers, something like that. So.
The good news is you're not alone. Almost every single guest that comes into the shrimp tank, hiring always becomes the biggest challenge. And then, once you do hire a lot of people, then you're dealing with HR issues. And then a lot of people wish they didn't scale. And they're like, oh, I just remember the old days when I had 5 people and we had good profit margins and I had no one bothering me.
Yes.
And then as you scale, it can lead to other issues that you didn't see coming, a lot of lawsuits. It happens. You have 500 people working for you. You're going to have a lawyer, writing your cell phone, texting probably every other week.
It's funny. Everyone tells you that, like exactly the advice you just gave. I've heard it a million times. And listen, that's why we're so picky. The guy I was interviewing today, I was a final interview today. I was asking questions to really find out, like, is he going to be a fit here? Because that's how important it is. But we're 23. What happens when we're 40 or 50? Then it just becomes a lot harder. So.
Yeah, and you can't figure it all out. At the end of the day, you just got to go with your intuition. And sometimes the people you hire that you think are going to be bad end up being the best. And it goes the other way. The people who are so sharp, this and that, and then they're gone. 6 months later, they were just BSing you. They're great at interviews, and it stinks. It happened to every business owner. We've seen it all.
We had someone like that stuck around for a year and a half. High salary guy that the day he left, the whole business took a sigh of relief and said, okay, let's get back to work. And he came in, he was the all-star of all-stars.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. So.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our newest sponsors, and we get back, we're going to jump to the Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
Are you ready to make your indelible impression? DeRay & Company is an award-winning, full-service public relations and marketing agency with offices in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Aspen, Colorado. With practice areas in business, real estate, cannabis, nonprofit, legal, and lifestyle, DeRay & Company is fully equipped to help clients reach their goals with strategies that are on point. Whether it's public relations, social media, digital marketing, content development, or other services, DeRay & Company delivers results for business owners that address their business goals and reach their targeted audience. To learn more about DeRay & Company and our services, visit DeRayandCompany.com. DeRayandCompany.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, catch all these amazing episodes at Shrimp Tank Boca live on Facebook Thursdays at 4 p.m. Peter, the segment of the show is called Plead the Fifth, right? So when we ask you a question, if you don't want to answer it, just say I plead the fifth, but you only get to say those words just once, and then after that, you got to figure a way how to get around that question, okay? So what is your biggest PR nightmare? 10 years running this business, in the technology world, in the medical world. I mean, you have to have some complainers, and you had to maybe posted something on social media that you had to pull back. What was your biggest PR nightmare?
That's a good question. I try to be very careful on social media about what I post, but I will say that early in the COVID crisis, where people were talking about hydroxychloroquine and nobody was sure, like we had a lot of doctors who were saying, I would use it, right? So, and these are really smart people who early on. So I go on Twitter and I said, considering hydroxychloroquine, and boy, I got for the first time ever, I got lambasted by everybody who just didn't want to use hydroxychloroquine. Obviously, now knowing what we know, they were right. I ended up deleting all those tweets.
So was that connected to your company though?
No. Remember, I've one of the hats I wear. I'm an EMS Medical Director for over 2,000 paramedics across Broward, Palm Beach County, and so part of my role is to keep them safe and to do all the COVID testing for them and so forth. So I had to figure out how do I protect people who are in the homes of people who have COVID, and is there a medication that they could take prophylactically so that they won't die?
Right. So that then associate with the company or have any impact?
No, thank God.
Okay, that's good. So what is the biggest conflict that you've had between your job and your company that you've had to deal with?
Yeah. I would say that when you're a physician entrepreneur, there's a lot of conflicts. Every time I give a talk, I'm very sure to put that second slide up that says disclosures. I started a company. This is the name of the company. I'm not talking about this company today, and I never do. So I've kept that far away. And the people who are like myself, I'm an academic, I'm a researcher. You never want to have someone cross the line and say, hey, I developed this product and I'm going to sell it to you, because it just doesn't come across that way. So I am eternally living with kind of those conflicts, and I'm very careful with, I rarely get on the phone with people, even prospects, about what I've created. It's difficult.
What will it take you to step down and do this business 100% of your time?
Well, that'll never happen. Number one, because I'm committed to the residents of the communities that I serve on the EMS side. My wife is an amazing person. She is fully committed, so that will never happen. And I can do more than one thing at a time. So. Yeah.
What percentage of your income derives from your regular job versus this?
I would say that my EMS jobs and the company at this point in time is 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you need both of these.
Honestly, the business is growing, so we're putting all the profits right back into the business. If I had to stop all the EMS stuff, I could, but I'm not going to ever do that. Now,
well, it's motivating. It's so motivating.
Yeah. Listen, I honestly, what I won't do is I won't add on. So a lot of people ask me to be their EMS medical director and their EMS medical director, so I won't. So I've put a moratorium on that, and I'm fortunate that I can do both things at the same time. But I don't need anything besides the company now, thankfully. But I will never stop the EMS side of the world. The ER, I've essentially kind of now put that to the side.
Okay, and that's probably more less stressful.
Well, remember, I was doing nights, I was doing
Right.
weekends, holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, you name it. I wasn't there. So now I have my life back. I have my time back. And after that lifestyle and not working in the ER I feel like I have a lot of time, much more time during the day to kind of do these other things as well. So.
Have you had a bad experience with a customer involving this where they just didn't react the right way? Have you had to
Sure.
customer demanding something and you had to fire the customer, that kind of? I mean, tell us
Sure,
about a
sure.
bad customer experience you had.
Sure. We have very low churn. Let's start off with that. There are customers who are given the system from the state level or from another entity that purchased it for them. Whenever someone gets something for free, and we've never given anything away, but these customers get the product. So someone knocks on their door and says, "Hey, you get Antevy," and they're like, "Okay," and they leave it on the shelf. And then when the renewal comes up, we say, they get a bill in the mail, and they say, I don't know what that is. And so oftentimes, the only people who churn are the people that we haven't really implemented, because so now we've kind of figured out what those those key things to do to get a customer using us, because once they use us, they never leave us, thank God. So we have, remember, compared to what they used to use, if someone says we don't want to use what you're using anymore, then it would be interesting to see what else they would do, because there really isn't anything else out there that has that's the other system is like 35 or 40 years old. But there are customers out there who just don't have the need or the want to fix their system, and they want to just leave it the way that it is.
What percentage of hospitals do you have right now? Like how much room do we have here?
Oh yeah, no, we have a lot of room. We have
So
a lot
yeah,
of
like
room.
3%, 7%, 10%? Like where are you?
So on the EMS side, there's about 19,000 agencies in the country. A majority of those are rural. And so we have over 1,300 now. So you do the math, we have a lot more to go. Hospitals is about 6,000, 6,500 hospitals in the country. And, we have maybe 100. So remember, the hospital system, we're just getting rolling now.
Sure.
But, and the rural systems, they don't have a lot of money to pay for this. Our software is very, very inexpensive. No one ever fights us on price. It's just a question of whether or not they have the willingness to do it and the administrative backup to actually want to get it done.
Is this done by a monthly subscription or
Yeah,
yearly?
yearly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yearly
What's the
renewal.
margin on something like this for the company?
The company does well. To give you the actual number of the margin, I don't have that off the top of my head. But as we scale, obviously early on, a lot of R&D. We still, our biggest number right now goes to our employees, typically our IT and sales and so forth. But we hope to stay small, as you said earlier, and then just to continue to get on, let's say about 300 to 500 new cities a year, and then the margins will go up from there. But the company does well, thankfully.
Coming back to your role as a medical director, I want to see if I can actually get you to say these words while you're on the show here. What's the biggest mistake a medical professional has made who was under your supervision? I mean, a lot of these individuals are dealing with life and death situations here.
Sure. What my biggest focus is on now is how we speak to people who are in the worst situation of their lives. When you're in EMS and you're a paramedic, you see death all day long and twice on Sunday, and you become numb to it. But what happens is you end up on the next scene where you have someone who's dead, and then you have the spouse sitting there crying, and the instinct is to say, "Not my problem," and walk away. I'm very adamant that we should not be doing that. And so we have great people. They do great things, but I just don't want people to lose the human touch and the human nature of why we do things. So I'm making a big push now of staying on scene, talking to families who have their child is dead in front of them, making a phone call, going to the funeral, sending them a note. We don't do enough of this, and that's part of what we try to teach others to do, is just to do the right thing when someone's having a really, really bad day.
Wow, what an answer.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to get him to say plead the fifth. What is the biggest pet peeve running this business with your wife?
So
Because a lot of people will not
Yeah.
go into business with their spouse.
Let me tell you what.
Say, hey, I see them
Yes.
40 to 100 hours during the week, but when I'm at work that 40 hours a week,
yeah.
doing business with the wife can get complex.
So luckily we have a great working relationship. Here's the biggest pet peeve though. I'm sitting, I love at nighttime, I turn the news on, I take the dogs out, I fed them, I sit on the couch and I pour myself a drink and I turn the news and then, we'll watch something else. And then my wife, because she's always she starts going into, we have an applicant tomorrow, we have to interview. And I'm like, no, we can't do that right now. So she is, from the moment she wakes up until, God love her, but she's an amazing person, amazing woman. But when you want to slow it down a little bit, it's hard to do that.
It's family business.
It's
That does not stop at the business.
It doesn't.
Go
It
on
doesn't.
and on
It
and on,
doesn't.
24/7.
And honestly, I feel guilty that I kind of exposed her to all this, but without her, this business would be, nothing. And so I feel bad because, I have a son now who's just became diabetic. And, my other son has some pulmonary issues, and she's trying to be mom and do all the stuff for the household and run a business. And, I'm everywhere at the same time, and my schedule is pretty crazy. So how, to put all that on her and in a growing business, not an easy thing to do. So if anyone's going to exit, I would like for her to kind of take a step back at some point where she knows that I'll never stop doing what I'm doing. So.
Well, I don't have any more.
I
I wanted to ask you. I just wanted to ask this and plead the fifth. But what is the name of the company? Antevy. It's sort of play on your name. What does it mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, remember when I told you that I gave that talk in front of the 200 people? The way that I figured this little trick that I figured out, I was sitting in the emergency department and I said, "What if I can figure out the dose of a child based on their age instead of their length?" And so I wrote some numbers on a piece of paper and I did some math calculations and it all hit me that on my hand, I say 1-year-old, 3-year-old, 5, 7, and 9-year-old, 10 kilo, 15 kilo, 20, 25, 30 kilos. Once I got that figured out, it almost kind of it just popped out of the paper that I can get 5 drug doses just by moving decimals around and just doubling the number, whatever. So instantaneously, I said, I got it. And when I started teaching this thing, I said, okay, everyone, put out your hands. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And a guy in the audience says, Antevy. And I said, I came home can you believe some guy said Antevy? My wife's like, that's a great name. I'm like, no, helping hand. She's like, no, Antevy. Now, the only negative is that people think my last name is Antevy.
Right.
Yeah, I was saying, I'm looking at your spelling your name. It's identical. Minus the H.
It's exactly right. So my kids are screwed because now everyone thinks they're Antevy. So.
This is reminding me of Chris Moneymaker when he won the World Series of Poker. I was like, his name cannot be Chris Moneymaker, and it was. It's kind of the same thing. How is this possible?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we've actually seen some funny names in the emergency department. One girl's name was Chlamydia. I swear to God. So please don't name your child Chlamydia. That's all I have to say.
Travis, you're listening? You're listening? Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, well, thanks for coming out to the Shrimp Tank today.
Absolutely.
For audience listening, if they want to get in touch with your brand, what is the best route?
So if people want to contact me directly, I'm on Twitter, Antevy MD. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to the website. But you could find us out there. Just type in Antevy and you'll find us.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming out to the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, we'll be back next Thursday at 4 p.m. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.